Happening in just a few hours, a few blocks from here, what is very likely to be the last side-by-side contrast between the two presidential campaigns before Election Day, presented by each side's number two, the high school history teacher and football coach, versus the venture capitalist and self-proclaimed joyful warrior versus the angry ideologue. Just about the only thing they have in common is that they're both from the Midwest. But just a few years ago, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Ohio Senator J.D. Vance also used to have one other thing in common. They both believed and said they believed that Donald Trump was a threat to America and America's democracy. J.D. Vance has described Donald Trump in harsher terms than nearly anyone who has ever appeared on this program, for sure. He called Donald Trump America's Hitler. He called him, quote, a total fraud, and, quote, a moral disaster, and, quote, cultural heroin. We actually could go on and on. Now, that view of Donald Trump and what he represents is gone from J.D. Vance's lips. Now we have a J.D. Vance 2.0, if you will, who is instead defined by a contempt for us, for democracy in our democratic institutions and the truth and the rule of law. And there's this seemingly endless disdain for us specifically, women, and a rather creepy obsession with our biological clocks.
Should a woman be forced to carry a child to term after she has been the victim of incest or rape? We want women and young boys in the womb to have the right to life. I think two wrongs don't make a right.
And this is one of the great tricks that I think the sexual revolution pulled on the American populace, which is this idea that, like, well, okay, these marriages were fundamentally, you know, they were maybe even violent, but certainly they were unhappy. And so getting rid of them and making it easier for people to shift spouses like they change their underwear, that's going to make people happier in the long term.
We're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too.
But I also think, there's something comparable, between abortion and slavery.
I certainly would like abortion to be illegal nationally. I'm sympathetic to the view that, like, okay, look, here's a situation. Let's say Roe versus Wade is overruled. And then, every day, George Soros sends a 747 to Columbus to load up disproportionately black women to get them to go have abortions in California. And of course, the left will celebrate this as a victory for diversity.
Clearly, this value set has made me a miserable person who can't have kids because I already, passed the biological period when it was possible. And I live in a 1,200 square foot apartment in New York and I pay $5,000 a month for it. But I'm really better than these other people. What I'm going to do is project my racial and gender sensitivities on the rest of them.
If I had been vice president, I would have told the states like Pennsylvania, Georgia, and so many others that we needed to have multiple slates of electors, and I think the U.S. Congress should have fought over it from there. That is the legitimate way to deal with an election that a lot of folks, including me, think had a lot of problems in 2020.
We need like a de-Bathification program, but like a de-wokeification program in the United States. We should just seize the administrative state for our own purposes. We should fire all of the people, fire every single mid-level bureaucrat, every civil servant in the administrative state, replace them with our people.
Your Republican ticket, ladies and gentlemen, the story of J.D. Vance's capitulation or transformation or masterclass in BS to now worship Trump is the story of the Republican Party in these times. It's just more stark, as everything is in 2024. Comments like the ones you heard is also why J.D. Vance is deeply unpopular just about everywhere. He has the lowest approval rating of any running mate in the history of NBC News polling on the question. Now, on the debate stage tonight, with the mics unmuted and no live audience, 2 minutes for an answer, 1 minute for a rebuttal, it will fall to Tim Walz to make sure that the American people understand what we just showed you, that J.D. Vance sits at the ideological frontier of the MAGA far right, with deep ties to the people behind Project 2025, that extreme and widely disliked blueprint for Donald Trump to rule the country like an autocrat. Walz will also be up against someone who has no problem lying if it works to his advantage, even if it means throwing his own constituents under the bus. Remember what he said about peddling lies about Haitian immigrants? But it
if
wasn't
I have
just a
to
meme,
create stories so that the American media actually pays attention to the suffering of the American people, then that's what I'm going to do.
If I have to lie just to make you cover it, oh well. Now, fortunately for the Harris campaign, in Tim Walz, they have a pretty effective attack dog, someone whose critiques of Trump and Vance are what propelled him to be on the ticket and on the national stage in the first place.
These are weird people on the other side. They want to take books away. They want to be in your exam room. That's what it comes down to. And don't, get sugarcoating this. These are weird ideas.
Here's the thing. It's an agenda nobody asked for. It's an agenda that serves nobody except the richest and the most extreme amongst us. And it's an agenda that does nothing for our neighbors in need. Is it weird? Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's also wrong. And it's dangerous.
Joining us at the table, Mini Timuraju is here, the president of Reproductive Freedom for All. Also joining us, MSNBC political analyst Tim Miller, former RNC spokesman, host of the Bulwark podcast. And here on set, New York Times political correspondent covering the Trump-Vance campaign, Michael Bender's here. So what does Vance do to prepare after he's gone on TV and advocated for all of these deeply unpopular positions?
Well, I think that is part of his debate prep is sort of subjecting himself to repeated interviews, going beyond just the friendly confines of conservative media, doing Sunday shows, more mainstream media where he'll take some more harder questions and they feel comfortable with the way he performs in that atmosphere, that he can stay largely on message in the campaign, and also preparing himself for tonight. I know the Vance team feels very much like there is not a question that he can get tonight that he hasn't fielded, whether in an interview, on his plane with the traveling press that I've been part of a handful of times so far this campaign, or at his rallies where he's taken an unusual step of including a reporter Q&A as part of those events.
What about the likability issue and the fact that weird has stuck so much that Donald Trump is like, they're not calling me weird, they're calling him weird?
Yeah, that's my big question for tonight. I think most Americans have only seen J.D. Vance in a few second clips, right, on social media here and there. They clearly don't like what they've seen so far. But the thing to remember about J.D. Vance is he is skilled. He is a smart. He is talented. He's sort of all these different things. He's an Ivy League educated attorney, but also with a foot his family from Appalachia and rural Ohio. He was as harsh of a never Trumper as he is pro-Trump now. He came from this online, sort of ultra online version of conservatism that's very combative, sarcastic, to make points and win likes. But he also knows that sort of very singular activity of scrolling on your phone, liking, comments, sharing is much different from than what's projected on a TV screen in the center of a shared living room. And he's very careful to come across in these kind of settings like tonight and in interviews as respectful and well-mannered. He won't change too much of what he says, but it's more of how he says it. And this was a big challenge for him in the 22 Senate race. He wants to show viewers that he's different from the caricature that his opponents have portrayed. Whether he can do that tonight while defending his positions and also defending Donald Trump is going to be, a real needle to thread there.
There's been an unbelievable effort to lower expectations for Governor Tim Walz. Why do you think?
I think the points you just made. I mean, J.D. Vance is a strong debater. J.D. Vance is a showman. He's used to going out there and saying whatever he needs to say. Tim Walz, while he's an incredibly skilled public figure, he's a politician. He was a moderate member of Congress who knew how to reach across the aisle. He knows how to communicate in a plain-spoken way. This is not necessarily